Hey guys, I'm Josh. I'm the student pastor here, and it's been a little while since I've had the chance to get to speak with you guys, at least in this setting, and so that's exciting to be back to. I wanted to share a quick story about my childhood with you. See, when I was little, my dad, he used to play this game. It's not my favorite game, but he used to play it. It's often in the car when I was kind of trapped and I couldn't go anywhere. He'd ask me this question. Maybe you've heard it. He'd say, Josh, who won the Kentucky Derby? I said exactly what you said. I said, what? I don't really know what you're asking, Dad. I don't even know what the Kentucky Derby is. And he'd raise his hand up in the air and he said, Charlie horse, boom, and smacked me right in the leg. And and I'm walking home. I was like, why are you walking so funny? And it's because we were playing this game and literally I couldn't do it to him. He was much bigger than I was. And so he just punched me in the leg, Charlie horse. And we played that game until he found out I was bigger than him. Oh, how the tables have turned. And you know what I found out when I became bigger than him? I found something out that one of my great loves in life is letting him know that I am bigger than him. And so I even got to do it over the last 2 weeks. I was back in Florida and I was visiting my dad and I got to I call it a prod. I prod him in the chest, or sometimes I'll ask him who won the Kentucky Derby and I'll get him and he's like, Josh, stop. Like mom's like, hey, he's getting old, leave him alone. And he says, stop. And I'm like, Dad, like, you don't understand. Like, now's my chance. Like, you did this to me. This is my revenge. I'm going to do this thing. And he says this phrase. Maybe you've heard it. He says, do as I say and not as I do, son. And sometimes he says it through a whimper because I just got him in the leg. Do as I say, not as I do. Man, I was thinking about that today as I've kind of been reading through some of the verses that we're going to be talking about. And I was just thinking, what a beautiful thing it is that this is exactly what Jesus does not say to us. Like, how beautiful is it that Jesus doesn't say, hey, I've got this audacious claim on your life, on how you are called to love and live people. Like, I've got this claim on what you should do, but he doesn't just say it. He also did it. He says, follow my example. See, we've been going through this series called Abide. A series, how we really kind of focused on that idea that I just talked about, how we are called to love and live like Christ, but the only way that we can do that is if we abide in him. If we are connected to him, letting him dwell within us, right? Like living life side by side with Jesus. Like that's how we bear fruit. And he sets that example for us to follow. If we look in John chapter 15, that's where we've been setting up camp. It's going to kind of give us a little bit of context. We're going to jump into verse 9. And I want you, I know, I wasn't here last week. I get it. Chad talked about verse 9 through 11. He did a great job. I'm not trying to redo that, but I think verse 9 through 11, 9 through actually 12, gives us some incredible context and leads into what we're about to talk about really well. So if you're looking for John, New Testament, it's after Matthew, Mark, Luke. It's right after that. It's before Acts, Romans, Corinthians. And in verse 9, chapter 15, it says this. It says, as the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love. I have told you this, so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. My command is this: love each other as I have loved you. 3 times. 3 times in those verses, he says the same kind of idea. He says, hey, don't just do as I say, do as I did. He says, do as I have done. And why would he put this huge emphasis here? Like, what's the point? I want you to think about it. If I'm in a room, or if you're in a room with someone that's a complete stranger, and I want you to imagine that you and this complete stranger have absolutely nothing in common. First of all, it's awkward, right? It's a little weird. It's uncomfortable, especially if you're an introvert, not your favorite thing. But you also don't have any common ground. I want you to imagine, you love sports. They love video games. You love intentional conversation. They love going into the woods and catching Pokemon, right? Like they love very different things. And so one of two things is going to happen in that relationship. Option one, you find common ground. Option one, you find common ground where you're like, man, no, I like those things too. I like to do those things too. Like we've got common ground. We can bond over this. And option two is you'll never be close. Option two, you don't find common ground. You just stand in the same room completely separate from each other. And the thing that I want to say is so important. Jesus wants to be so incredibly close to you. Like Jesus wants to be so caught up in relationship with you. He wants to lavish his love on you like he's been calling you by name before you were born. He had a plan for your life before you knew what a plan was. But the problem is some of us will stand in the same room as Jesus, but we don't have any common ground. See, the things he does and the things he likes aren't necessarily the things that you do and the things that you like. And so Jesus is in this room, literally in the room, because he wants relationship with you. But some of us just struggle to want to do our part, right? Because it's a cost. Like we're going to have to give things up. It means our life is going to look different. And we're scared. But Jesus meets us in that room. He says, just do as I do. I told you who you are. Now follow my ways. That verse 12, I want to jump back to it because it's so important. It says this, my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. Here's what it doesn't say. It doesn't say love each other as best you can. Like, love each other to your heart's delight. It doesn't say, like, love each other until your sister gets really, 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 really annoying. Or until your parents ground you and it was a little unfair and they didn't understand and they didn't try to understand. Or that teacher who doesn't really even teach, right? Like, they didn't give you the grade that you thought you deserved. I know you guys relate to that. See, we've got all these reasons and we've got all these exceptions and all these excuses, and Jesus says, I'm not going to give you an out. He says, I want you to love by my example. Love as I do. See, the Bible talks about all kinds of different types of love, right? There's a romantic love, there's a brotherly love, there's an empathetic love. There are four major loves that are used, and this one is a little bit different. This one means something special. It's called agape. Somebody say agape with me. Agape. Say it again, agape. Agape is special because agape is a godly love. Agape is an unconditional, without strings, no contract, no expirations kind of love. Agape is the way that God loves us. It's without border, it's without limits. And if I'm being honest, I'm real bad at it. I don't know if you're like me, I'm terrible. Agape love is so difficult for me to pull off. Like, it's not easy at all. I mess it up all the time on a regular basis. Here's one of the reasons. I have this reflex, maybe you can relate. This reflex, I don't even do it intentionally, but someone hurts me or causes me pain or doesn't love me well, and my reflex is I withhold love from them. Like, it's not that I'm necessarily even trying to be mean, but I hold my love back from them. All right, I'll give you an example that most of you have probably done. So who's ever been in a text argument? Just raise of hands. All right, like we all have, right? First of all, hey, just side note, this isn't the message. Gilma, you're a champ. All right, this isn't the message. Biblical conflict, not meant for the iPhone. Don't do it on the iPhone. All right, hey, so who's done a text conflict, right? You're like, oh man, you messed up. I can't believe you did this. You caused me so much hurt. I want you to know how frustrated I am. And so you get to that point where words are not enough. And so you do the best strategy you know how. You stop texting. Right? You stop texting because I want you to know I'm so frustrated with you, you don't even deserve my words. Right? Like, I want you to stew in this. I want you to feel this. Is that agape love? No. And the reality is, hey, most of us don't think in our minds, hey, I want this person to suffer. I want them to sit in this. But the reality is, that's the posture of our heart. Because we're not interested in loving them. We're just interested in winning the argument. That's not agape love. That's selfish. And so what do we do? Like, if agape love is so incredibly hard and Jesus calls us to live it out well, how do we do this in our life? What can this even look like? I was even thinking about, like, as I was writing this, I didn't even have this in the original message, but like, God's real funny like this. So I'm writing it, and my quiet time this morning was super convicting because over the last 2 weeks, my wife and I, we've been on vacation. It's been a ton of fun, and I have not loved her well at all. I haven't. It's hurtful, guys. Give me some grace. No, I just haven't, like she is the person that has probably seen my agape love fail the most, right? She's the person that I promised to show the most grace to be the most patient with, to lavish love upon. Like I promised this to her when we stood at the altar. And at the same time, over this last week, I feel like I've lacked grace, and I've been impatient, and I've been selfish, and I've been hurtful, and I've said things that I don't mean. And that's my bride. Agape love is incredibly hard. But Jesus says, listen, you didn't love her well. It's not great. But he still has agape love for me. And he says, hey, listen, like, okay, you messed up, own it, but at the same time, try again. He says, do as I did. Do as I say, do as I do. Verse 13, it goes on to share what this type of love actually looks like. It's funny, before I was saved, this was one of my favorite verses. I don't know why. But greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. He's saying, like, there's nothing better than this type of love. Like, you want the best, you want the elite, you want the utmost, you want the paramount. This is the best there is, right? This type of love, agape love. And what's this love look like? What do? You lay down your life for your friends, right? Like, that's what it looks like. Unconditional, self-sacrificing. I'm going to place you above myself. Some of us are just like, oh, but wait, hold on. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's too much, right? Like, laying down your life. Like, that's insane. Like, Jesus, you don't understand. I think if we said that to him, he'd laugh at us. Of course, Jesus understands. Like, Jesus did this whole process by getting on the cross to pay for our sins, right? Dude gave absolutely no defense, even though he was innocent. He didn't fight back, even though he commanded legions of angels. He didn't curse us, even though we cursed him. Instead, he prayed. This is what agape love looks like. To lay down your life for your friends. I want to share a pet peeve of mine. I don't have many, but the ones that I do have, they drive me nuts. Senior boys, when you weaponize this against me, I will have my revenge. But here's my pet peeve. You guys are the worst. It drives me nuts when someone, and when they're being serious, they go, man, I'd take a bullet for you. I'm like, how do you know? Listen, I served in the army and I don't know, man. Like the reality is that, and we even talked about it in the past, of faith that is untested can't be trusted. Well, the reality is stuff like that's untested can't be trusted either. Like you don't know what you're gonna do in that situation. So when they say that, I'm just like, man, that doesn't really match up, especially since you made some weird fake excuse about why you wouldn't help me move last weekend. Like if you're not gonna love me in the little things, then why would I trust you in the big things? Because here's the reality, and this is what I want us to take away from this message, is laying down your life doesn't need to be as extreme as taking a bullet for somebody else. You can lay down your life tonight. You can lay down your life for somebody else today, tomorrow, this weekend. See, you lay down your life by placing the lives of others above your own. See, when you lay down your life, you lift somebody else's up. Maybe it's you go home and the house is a mess, and it's not your mess, and your parents didn't ask you to clean it up, but you cleaned it anyways because you said, you know what, I'm going to love them well. I'm going to lay down my life and lift theirs up. Maybe it's that person in school, the cafeteria, where they get made fun of and your friends are the ones doing it, and you're going to stick up for them even though it means that you might get picked on too, because you're going to lay down your life and you're going to pick theirs up. Maybe there's a teacher that you've talked bad about because you're frustrated and angry and you've done it in a wrong way, and now you need to go to them and ask for forgiveness because you need to lay down your life and lift theirs up. Maybe there's someone that you hurt, someone you've talked about, somebody that you've caused immense pain to because you didn't meet expectations that you were supposed to meet, and you need to lay down your life and lift theirs up. Maybe you got a friend who doesn't know Jesus, and you haven't shared Jesus with them because you're so afraid of being rejected. But today you say, you know what, if I get rejected today, that's fine because I'm more worried about their acceptance for eternity. And so I'm not going to worry about today. My today doesn't equal their eternity. It doesn't equal their forever. And so I'm going to lay my life down and I'm going to lift theirs up. Guys, we have an opportunity to risk for the kingdom. We have an opportunity to lay ourselves down and for people to look and just say, why are they doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Like, why would they risk so much? Why would they sacrifice so willingly? Why would they love so fiercely? But we got to lay our life down and lift theirs up. So how are we doing? How are we doing in those relationships that are a little bit harder? With those people that are a little bit harder to love because they talk about diving in front of bullets. Or maybe they're just frustrating. Or maybe they're mean and they don't love you and they're an enemy. And still Jesus says, lay your life down, lift theirs up. This is how a movement starts. When we come together and we say, hey, as a community, we're going to lay our lives down. And we're going to lift them up until they realize that we are lifting them up to the Lord. That they will be closer to Him because of the way we have lived. That's what winning looks like for the movement. But we have to lay our lives down and lift theirs up. Would you pray with me? Jesus, we love you so much. And loving sacrificially is one of the scariest things you call us to do. Because even in that word, it means sacrifice. Even in agape, it means unconditional. And that means conditions, hopes that we had, expectations aren't going to be met. And loving through that is so difficult, Lord. But I ask you to cut the strings. Cut the strings that we place on these different ideas and these relational contracts where we try to get people to live inside these boxes that we've created. Lord, help us to love them despite what they do. Help us to love them despite what we do, despite the shame that can come in when we mess up. Help us to own our part and seek forgiveness. Help us to pursue people even when they don't want to be pursued. God, give us a passion for your word and sharing your truth. We're here for you, Lord. When we stand in a room with you, we want common ground, and so give us the things to do that you would do and help us to do it side by side with you. God, we love you. In your name, amen.